So now that you've recovered, what's your day-to-day life like? Is it back to normal? So getting back to normal, this is something people ask me a lot, like getting back to normal, is it actually getting back to normal?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It absolutely gets right back to normal. You get right back in the thick of things. You go back to the regular stresses of life, like you get right back in it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, and it's going to be normal, and you're actually going to be happy to have those stresses instead of worrying about if the sky is going to cave in on you or if your dishwasher, when you open it, is going to suck you in. You know what I mean?
Hey everyone, I'm Shaun O'Connor, author of the Depersonalization Manual, and today I'm speaking with LaToya Newton from New York City. You might know LaToya from her fantastic podcast and blog, The Analog Girl, where she discusses topics like anxiety management, mental health awareness, personal growth, and depersonalization disorder. LaToya is also a published author, and her book, Lose the Thoughts, Keep the Mind, How to Stop Overthinking, is available now on Amazon and Audible. I first spoke to LaToya back in 2018, and we've stayed in touch since, and I appeared as a guest on her podcast a few years ago. So LaToya had quite a frightening experience with depersonalization disorder, but she has since fully recovered. And LaToya is with us today to tell us about her experience with and recovery from depersonalization disorder. Thank you for being here, LaToya. You're very welcome to the channel.
Thank you for having me, Shaun. I'm super excited to talk with you today. This is so fun. I'm so happy for you with this platform. This is dope. So just wanted
Yeah,
to say that first off.
thank you so much. Yeah. No, it's an interesting thing chatting to people who have recovered, kind of like
Mhm.
comparing and contrasting the stories. Yeah, it's great. It's a pleasure to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, LaToya? What do you work at? What's your background?
Sure. So right now I live in New York City, as you said. I'm still in the Bronx, actually, Bronx born and raised. I am a senior project manager at an advertising firm in Brooklyn. And then I kind of do a little side hustle of producing and podcasting on the side, as a lot of people know. So it's kind of I would say, a Renaissance woman. So that's my life in a nutshell. I'm also a single mom, and people are going to pass out when I say, but my son is 27 years old, and he's actually engaged to get married. So I have a daughter
Wow.
now, which is awesome. They're actually going to be coming here today, so super excited about that. But that is me in a nutshell. A mom. I'm working. I'm just out here living. Mhm.
You sound like the busiest woman in America.
Listen, I gotta pay the bills. Okay, I got to pay
Yeah,
the
yeah.
bills. So yeah, so I stay
Fantastic.
busy. Hmm.
Good. That's great. LaToya, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with DPDR? How did it start for you?
Sure. So, I will never forget, March 1st, 2018. I woke up and I felt like I was in a dream. I just kept saying, something feels weird. Like, I feel like I'm dreaming. Like, I feel like I'm still asleep, but I'm up. So I was like, and I kept saying it, and then I thought, I remember my mom saying like she felt that way when her iron was low. So I kept saying, maybe my iron's low, maybe my iron's low. And like it progressed during the week, and I was like, nah, this is not iron. Like, this is something else. So I, like many others, immediately went to the extreme worst and thought I was dying. I thought I was having a stroke. I thought I don't know what I thought. And sometimes, and come to find out, I think a couple weeks prior, I had smoked some weed. I was drinking heavy. I was in a very dark space. I was in a situationship at the time that was just not beneficial to me at all and very stressful. So I think it was a combination of stress, smoking weed that does not sit well with me. I had a panic attack after the weed smoking, but I went back to normal after that. So like the depersonalization was kind of like a residual thing. Like it happens a week later, which is rare because some people don't say that. Like they normally go into the depersonalization right after the panic attack. So for me, it was like I gradually sipped in to this dark state, the depersonalization. So that was the journey. It started on March 1st, and it was the journey of the Googling and the forums and the and the emergency room visits and the psych evals. And just at work, I lost my job because I didn't know what was going on there. I was in meetings. I was just gone. I was absolutely gone for about a month and a half until I started to Google and I found your manual. And I started to watch other people's stories on YouTube and started to gradually come out of it then. Yeah. So that was it. That was how it started.
It's a tough experience. I actually had something very similar to that as well, LaToya. So when I had a very, very frightening experience on weed. And then it was a couple of weeks later when I was at my parents' house just watching TV at night, and I had a massive panic attack. Very similar to the panic attack I had when I was on the weed, although at that time I don't think I ever used the term panic attack. It was only kind of weeks later that I was like, oh, that's what that term means, you know. But the scariest thing about the panic attack when I had it in my parents' place was that I felt like I was back in that weed experience, back in that weed headspace, even though I hadn't taken anything, you know. So that intense feeling of disconnection and fear of the world around me, like a pane of glass was between me and the world, had happened again, except this time I'd had like 2 beers and I was in the safe space of my parents' place, as opposed to, you know, wandering the streets of Amsterdam, which is what happened the first time. Yeah.
So that would probably help.
Finest hour.
Yeah, I'm about to say that's probably was helped to distract a little bit, at least walking, you know, once you come down from it. But and what I also find is that if we, like you said, you had a couple of beers. So if we have even though we don't smoke the weed and we continue to drink the alcohol, there's still some types of effects that might trigger a panic attack or trigger the DP. So that was something that I learned too. Like, this could have been compounded with me smoking, drinking, and stress, all together. So just my brain working on overdrive.
Absolutely. And it's like kind of, I always think a good way to think of it is just like, there's like accumulated stresses that build up over time. Yeah. And we might be aware of some of them, like having exams coming up at school and being really, really worried about it. And then there might be other stuff, like there may be kind of stress at home, for example, or stress in a relationship that you kind of get used to. You're like, okay, well, I'm with someone who's difficult, or there's a tough situation at home, but there's nothing I can do about it. So it kind of becomes like emotional tinnitus. It's just there. It's there all the time. But then when you kind of add in a couple of other factors, like a bad weed experience, or you know, like encountering violence or something like that. Yes. So these things suddenly kind of hit each other, and then you're having a massive panic attack, and you're like, where did this come from? I think especially when we're younger as well, when we're kind of like, you know, in our kind of like, you know, 20s and early 30s as well, we kind of tend to think we're a bit invincible. And this stuff is like, that's fine, that's fine, I can deal with that. And then your brain says, actually, you can't. You know? No, you can't.
We need a break.
We need a break. So we're going to set off all the alarms at the same time. Yeah. It's a scary experience. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Sorry, I was about to ask you a question, because, you know, it's just always interesting to compare stories. So you were saying that you had a couple of beers and then you were sitting on the couch and then you had the panic attack, right? So once you had the panic attack, you immediately started feeling like you were in a dream world?
What I clearly remember is, first I was watching the film Heat, right? Which is a great film.
One of the best movies ever.
One of the best. And also, like, one of the worst aspects of my experience with DPDR was I thought, well, I can never watch Heat again. You know, I love that movie. I can never watch De Niro and Pacino again. Like, you know,
really? Anyways, still to this day?
Oh no, I can. Oh,
you kept going. Now I can. Now you can. But then you were like, this caused it.
I have it on Blu-ray over there, actually. But at the time, I was like, no, I'm done for. I can't watch this again, because it'll set me off. All these kind of little phobias we build up. But I do remember I was watching that film, and I felt like I felt like reality collapsed around me. Now I could, and I remember thinking like, I couldn't see it happening. Like it wasn't as if like the walls like started kind of moving or anything. There wasn't any hallucinations, but I had a strong sense that like this reality was coming apart or something, you know. But as frightening as it was, it felt familiar because that's what it felt like when I was like coming up on that weed roller coaster in Amsterdam a few weeks prior. Um and also kind of waiting for the visual stuff to happen because I was like, I was thinking, this is it, I'm going crazy. This is what going crazy feels like. And it happens when
you've had in the blink of an eye.
In the blink of an eye. Yeah.
Just in the blink of an eye. It's so strange.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that like, if there's the thing about panic and anxiety is that if there's something there that clearly triggers it. So like, for example, if I was watching Heat and I turned around and there was like a grizzly bear standing in the corner of the room, right? Then the terror that I would fear in that context would make sense because I would like, well, there's a grizzly bear, right? So and then after I got out of the situation, all the symptoms of panic, including DPDR, would fade away and stop because they had happened for a reason. Now I may want to rethink going to the sitting room with a grizzly bear, but that's a different story. Right. but when that same effect happens when there is no physical representation of danger around you, and that fear becomes inverted, and you think this is coming from me, then you think I'm dying, I'm going crazy, and you keep checking on it, and then it just keeps going and going and going.
The check-in is that's another stressor too that's added to it. But the check-in was extremely hard for me to do. And my fear, like I was even scared to look up at the sky. Like if I look up at the sky, I would get so nervous because it was like I don't know what's the unknown. I don't know what. It was a lot of existential stuff that I was going through. So mine was very heightened with existential crisis stuff. Like if I die, where do I go? What is outside? What is beyond the sky? Everything was scaring me. If I saw signs that like said, even if I see, like to this day, I'm still a little triggered. Like if I kept seeing the word death, I thought like, oh, that's for me. Oh my God.
That's for me. Yeah.
I know. Oh my God. That's a sign.
Yeah.
So I still, have to like process or, say, girl, that is not for you. So, there's still little residual things that I still have to like, use my tools and make sure that I stay in a healthy mind space.
Sure. The sky thing was big for me as well. Like walking out and looking up at a blue sky. So first there'd be all the existential stuff that came with it. So my thing was like, what happens if the sky like cracked open or I got sucked up into space? Right? One of my many spectacular phobias that I am now like, likelihood of that happening is fairly slim. But at the time, at the time, you just kind of get these thoughts like, or this or I would start thinking about like the size of the universe, and that would absolutely terrify me.
Yes.
And seeing the sky would cue that. And also, I don't know if you had this as well, LaToya, but for me, looking up at the sky as well, looking at any kind of like white or kind of blank spaces, I would see like floaters and tracers in my vision, which are normal parts of human vision. But when your anxiety is super high, you spot these things and you think that they mean that something is wrong. There's something wrong with your vision. I'm going blind, So then for me, I started avoiding going outside because I couldn't look up at the sky. And then I started, then I realized I'm now a shut-in. Now I'm somebody who like 2 months ago, I was going to music festivals, and now I'm in my bedroom in my parents' place, and I can't go to the bathroom now.
Scared to even go into the bathroom because it doesn't seem familiar, to things like. And I lived alone, and my mother had to come stay with me for a week because I was like, something is not right, And I was out to dinner with my friends, and they were just looking at me like, what is wrong? I was like, yo, I feel like I'm not here. I feel like this is not real. And one of my friends was like, well, I'm going to tell you, this is very real. I am real. And I was just like, I don't need it right now. Like something is not right. That's like, I have got to go home. And I just remember being in the bathroom and I was like, I just feel like I'm high and I can't stop being high. Um, and that was actually one of the ways that I was able to kind of calm down, because I started to train myself to say, well, if you feel like you're high, then let's just say I'm high and I'm just enjoying the experience. I had to kind of like shift the way I was seeing it, like to play tricks on my mind. And I was just like, all right, well, if this is what it feels like to be high, I'm just going to try to just stay in this space and be like, oh, this is great. This is great. Like, this is great. I was doing anything and everything, because it was like I was on a constant, like my heart was constantly racing for like at least 2 weeks. Because they would calm down and then I would think about something else and I would start, or I would start thinking about going to hell, all the bad things I did, and then thinking about all the bad things I did that caused my parents to do bad things. And then I'm like worrying about them. And it was so much, so much, very strange. So much. But I'm happy to not be in that space anymore. What a blessing. What a blessing.
For sure. The thing you mentioned, Toya, about saying to yourself, well, if I'm high, I may as well enjoy it. Yeah. As it's those types of, we sometimes try these kind of approaches that work because there's a phrase that says anxiety is caused by the fear of anxiety, and panic attacks are caused by the fear of panic attacks, and depersonalization is caused by the fear of depersonalization. But often we can find these little tricks that say, well, if I'm high, I may as well. It's cheaper than getting high used to be, so I may as well enjoy it. But in a way that humor kind of kicks the structure out from under the anxiety. And then you kind of have a couple of minutes or like half an hour where you're like, I'm actually not thinking about this. And then you start thinking about it again. And then you're back into it, right? But
like, oh wow, it was about a whole hour.
Yeah. I had a lovely hour of not thinking about it. And now I've noticed that I didn't think about it. And now I'm thinking about it again. So you get back into that feedback loop. But and the thing you mentioned as well about like the heart constantly racing is like, it's the perfect description of what's happening, because when your heart is beating more quickly, it's happening because your body is still, your anxiety levels are higher than they should be. And you're still in fight or flight response, even though it may not be a fully fledged panic attack, but it's still higher than it should be. But the thoughts and feelings of depersonalization and derealization are like the mental equivalent of your heart beating too quickly over the course of the week. And then you check in and your heart beating too quickly and go, my heart's beating too quickly, am I going to have a heart attack? And then starts beating more quickly because of that. And then that feedback loop happens. But it's essentially the same thing with these mental and physical symptoms. It's just that with the mental symptoms, we then jump to very frightening conclusions like, oh, this must mean that I'm either going to hell or I'm in hell, or I'm paying for my sins or my parents' sins, and these elaborate explanations for what's actually a very, very simple mental process.
Exactly. And I feel like what you've grown up in, who you are and what your identity is, it will, how can I say this? Like whoever you are and what you've known, those fear and what you feared all your life, it will magnify during that time. And that's what I noticed, because see, I'm a preacher's kid. I grew up in church. I've been in church all my life. So of course, my fears would center all around being a bad person, sinning, God, am I dying? I don't want to go to hell. All of that stuff is centered around that. So I feel like, who you are and what your identity is going to, whatever that is going to heighten. Though whatever your phobias are, it's going to be connected severely to your identity is what I'm trying to say. So it makes sense that, you're in film and you watch films, and then now you're scared to watch Heat. You know what I mean? Like saying like, I'm scared to look at the sky because I'm like, is God out there? Or I'm scared to, say curse words at that time, because I was like, if I say a curse word, this is going to be bad. Like, I was literally in the Bible trying to be the best Christian ever, whatever I thought it was at that point, to not be in that space. Yeah,
that's very interesting, and it's and I had a similar experience, and I think my version of that was that, you know, I was at a time in my life where I was really kind of exploring lots of kind of alternative modes of thinking, and kind of I was reading a lot about like occultism, and about like, you know, about like kind of drug use in that context, like, you know, reading about like kind of Alistair Crowley, and kind of like you know, Jim Morrison, Terence McKenna, people who kind of advocate like drug use as a kind of method of, you know, invoking different ways of thought. It's fascinating stuff, like, and something that I think a lot of kind of teenagers kind of go through at some point, people in their early 20s.
for sure.
And anyways, it's something I definitely explored and found very, very fascinating. But my thing was that, like, I had gone too far with it. So I had messed around with this stuff, and now I had opened a door that I couldn't close. And I was now going to pay for it for the rest of my life. So I had, to quote Raiders of the Lost Ark, or to quote one of the Indiana Jones films, I had meddled with forces I couldn't possibly comprehend. Right? And now the rest of my life was going to, I can forget about working in film, but what I'm going to do is probably going to like from school to school warning kids about the dangers of drugs, like, you know. That's what my life is going to be now. And I had like projected all this into the future. And so what I mean to say is that, like, I had this big kind of dramatic narrative constructed around what had happened to me, when in reality, what happened was I went to Amsterdam and I smoked a joint that was way stronger than I thought it was going to be. I had a really bad time, and I had a panic attack.
Yes.
And then another panic attack a week or 2 weeks later or whatever. And that's it. And that's it.
It's just so hard to believe that it's just anxiety. Like, this has to be, it was like we all had to be like, this has to be some kind of spiritual metamorphosis. Like, I was even covering the pictures of Biggie Smalls and Tupac in my house, because I was like, this, maybe it's their spirits, this is demonic.
Sorry.
Whatever.
It's Biggie. Biggie's back, and he is pissed.
Taking it down. Maybe I shouldn't have these hip hop artists, because then I also had TLC up there, and I'm like, whatever Left Eye was getting into, I don't know. I'm taking it. Like, crazy.
Oh man, that's wild. Yeah.
So yes, it's just so crazy how we have such a similar, like, it's, you know, and I feel like it's for those who are like really into any kind of spiritual or religious sector of their life, and they go through this, it just enhances it more for us, I believe. I really do.
Yeah, for sure. And so much of it is like having this like intensely weird experience of like feeling disconnected from the world around you, but your rational mind is fine. Like, your rational mind is saying like, okay, let's find an explanation for this. But because it's not something that's more immediately identifiable, like agoraphobia, claustrophobia, social anxiety disorder, for example. But because it's DPDR, and it's less easily identifiable than those, and certainly at the time it was less widely known. That is changing now. But we try to find an explanation for ourselves, and because there's no explanation forthcoming, we start to say, well, this is because I messed around with drugs, or this is because Tupac is punishing me for my misdeeds. But those explanations are, at the time, they feel as plausible as anything else, because there is no explanation for what you're going through when you're going through it first. LaToya, so at what points did you kind of find the word depersonalization? Was it a couple of weeks later? Was it on a forum or online, or how did you come across the term?
I can't really remember. I feel like it took me a couple of weeks to pinpoint it. because I know it happened March 1st, and I feel like you and I had bought your book, and then I remember I went back to the email that I actually sent to you when I bought the DP manual, and it wasn't even as elaborate as it is now. So folks who's getting the manual now, listen, y'all getting a treat, because it wasn't even as elaborate then, but it still was 100% effective and helpful. So I think that was like April, maybe like mid-April is when I got your manual. So for 2 weeks prior so I'm gonna say end of March is when I started to pinpoint and be like, after going to get 2 CAT scans in the emergency room, maybe 3 or 4 times. And I even sought out therapists where I was going. One woman told me that I need to go get checked because she believed that I was in the beginnings of schizophrenia. That's what that woman said to me. And I was like, nah, I refuse to believe this. Like, I'm not doing this. So it took me about 3 to 4 weeks to find your manual. And when I found your manual, that's when I was like, this is what it is. Because I was in forums and reading stuff, but I was like, there's no way this is what it is, because the people were like, I've been in it for 3 years, 4 years. And I was like, nah, no, this is not it. Like, it can't be. So I was in a state of denial. So I feel like it took me, like maybe like 3 to 4 weeks for me to like pinpoint and say, this is depersonalization. And so when I finally heard depersonalization DPDR, I was like, oh, this is it right here. And it helped me to relax. And once I started seeing like, this is just anxiety, that's when I was like, okay, so if it's just anxiety, then I feel like this is something I could beat.
Yeah. Sure.
So, I think it takes a while of, going down. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks to be going down those forums. Because my main thing to Google was like, I feel like I'm in a dream world, or I feel like everything is a dream. And then depersonalization comes right up now. It wasn't then like that.
Yeah. And the reason that's happening is because people who type in those symptoms, the pages that they come across that they can relate to more are the ones that are talking about depersonalization. Mm-hmm. And certainly would have been the case for me as well back in the day, because I was typing those search terms in and getting nothing. Like, I was getting like academic papers and stuff.
Yes.
But that is.
Remember, I told you it was really nothing in the US. Like, it was mostly UK. And I was like, well, what, does nobody in the US go through this? Like, what in the world? It was mostly in the UK, British articles and stuff like that.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more? Sorry, LaToya. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience with like speaking to therapists and such? What was that like?
So the first woman, I obviously got the hell out of there. I was just like, I'm not doing this. And now I will have to say, I will thank God that, like you said, my rational mind was there. It was just whatever what's the other mind we have? Because you said we have a rational mind. What's the other mind? Just a DP mind?
Well, in this context, it would be the rational mind versus like the fight or flight response, which is saying like you're the DEFCON 1 intensity personalization, but your rational mind is saying like, okay, but there's no bear here, so why is this happening?
Okay. Yeah. So my rational mind, even though I was like, I'm coming to therapy because I don't feel like I'm safe. I don't feel like I'm dying. Something's wrong. People are telling me I have to start going to therapy because it's residual trauma. So I immediately am like, I need to get to the root of this. But when this lady told me about schizophrenia, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. I do have to say that being a Black woman, anybody who is a person of color, we have to be very careful. Here in the United States, I don't know any other places, just, my United States experience, that we do have to be careful with the therapist that we choose, because there might not be the certain level of care. There might not be the compassion or the sensitivity, because I think what she did was absolutely wrong. Like, there's no way, because you're not even a psychiatrist. You're a psychologist. So for you to tell me, to even mention the word schizophrenia to me was like just like bizarre. That's crazy. So you do have to be cognizant of that when you're searching out for therapy. And even if you're not a person of color, if they just don't know what DP is, the therapist, every time I've talked to a therapist, no one knows. I can tell when they're typing. I don't know if you had this experience, but then they're like, so what's it called? Depersonalization. And then they'll go and type it in. So a lot of therapists have no clue what this is still to this day. So I think you have to be very careful about that, and find people who deal with strictly anxiety and depression and disassociation, because if they do deal with a disassociation, they'll most likely know what depersonalization is. I also encountered a guy who he was like really pushing very hard for me to go into my traumas, my daddy issues. I was not receptive to that because I just wanted the depersonalization to go away. So I feel like his approach was a little too aggressive for me. And then I found another therapist who, she was in the church. She was very compassionate. She dealt with me through spiritual. She counseled me spiritually, and she also counseled me for what is it, spiritual and therapeutic. So I guess that's the two different things, maybe not. But she counseled me in the spiritual realm, and then she also counseled me as far as my mental health and anxiety and stuff like that. So I found that happy medium with her, and I stayed with her for a whole year through that. So I think that the therapy is good and it should happen. I think that it takes time to find the right therapist, and you just have to be very careful. Because somebody can, like, that lady could have really sent me someplace else, like down another dark place where I probably couldn't have came out of, or sent me back panicking. And I just knew at that moment, like, I was like, I'm not coming back here. I don't have schizophrenia. Like, I've just always had that driving me. Like, deep down, I know that this is not who I am. This is very strange what's happening. It's weird, but it's gonna stop. There was just always this fight in me. But I mean, long story less long. That was a horrible experience until I found someone who was compassionate and who was open about researching what it was and learning how to attack attack the monster at the head, or whatever, the dragon at the head, or something like that, she would say. And we started with working on the anxiety and where it comes from, and the residual trauma that I've experienced from childhood on. So that's how it worked for us.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I remember speaking to a guy who is he's one of the leading researchers into depersonalization, derealization in the United Kingdom. I did it for an article I wrote for a journal a couple of years ago, and I asked him this question. I said, like, how is it possible that, like, it's estimated that, like, 75% of people will experience DP and DR at some point in their lives as part of the natural, correct anxiety trauma response. 1 in 50 people will experience this in a chronic context, where it goes on for way longer than it should do. 1 in 50, right? And I said, like, how is it possible that that's the case and it's not more recognized in the medical community? And he said, well, it's actually very, very simple. The main reason is that it's very difficult to describe. So if a patient comes in and starts describing the symptoms of claustrophobia, for example, so I get into an elevator, I have a panic attack. That's called claustrophobia. It's an anxiety-based condition. It's very common. It's not permanent. You'll recover. But for a patient trying to describe the symptoms of depersonalization, especially if they are new to it, they may often struggle to verbalize their experience. People will say things like, I remember trying to describe it back in the day to a family member and saying, I feel like my memories are being fragmented. Like that was one of my attempts at describing my experience. But even that is it's such a vague attempt at what it is, because I didn't know the term back then either. the term depersonalization, derealization. So because of that, a lot of diagnoses just kind of get lumped into anxiety, or more so anxiety, which technically speaking isn't incorrect, because it is actually an anxiety-based condition, but it doesn't get categorized and delineated in the same way that like claustrophobia or agoraphobia does.
Yeah.
Because of that, it becomes more difficult to research DPDR, because we need, or the medical community needs, large amounts of study groups in order to study properly. Because of that, it's not mentioned as much in research and in the DSM and such. And then because of that, doctors are less aware of it. So it's a kind of it's a feedback loop. But, and he said it, and he couldn't emphasize this enough. And I've been finding this too. I don't know if you have as well, with people you've been speaking to, but that is changing. Like how it was for me back in 2005, like there was no information about it. But because it's been, people are talking about it more, celebrities have talked about it more. Bo Burnham mentioned derealization in his Netflix special, Inside.
I don't know that. What special is that?
This guy called Bo Burnham. This dude is a genius. He's like he's a film director. He's a musical composer. But he made this like a COVID special thing, not a COVID special, but like a thing of him making music on his own in lockdown, and for Netflix. It sounds like it's not great. It's incredible. It's like, it's just like a volcano of creativity. But he talks about like the experience of kind of being a young person in the age of the internet, like with like being bombarded with information, kind of like, you know, everything everywhere all at once. Everything, but one of the things he mentions derealization at one point. And apparently that's that, because it was like one of the most watched things on Netflix that year. And so the interest in derealization spiked, and even things like that, the cultural mentions of it bring the awareness up, which of course then filters off into all different things, including the medical community. So if like a therapist hasn't heard of it, it's not because of like a kind of a dismissal of it or anything. It's often just because of the nature of the condition. But thankfully, and also because of the Google algorithm, as we were talking about earlier, people typing in the symptoms and getting a result, they will bring that to their doctor and say, "This is it. This is the thing. This is it." Like, you know.
Yes. Yes. So and now your program pops up right away. Now.
Oh, good.
Which is great. So I do agree. Like, yeah, I would assume that more people are going through it now since 2020, with all of the high levels of anxiety and depression that's going on. So I hope and pray that it becomes more and more common to talk about. I haven't really ran across people that it's common, but I have come across people that be like, "Girl, I went through that like 2 years ago. I just never said anything." So there's just so many people out here who are not saying anything, who are suffering in silence, think that they're dying. I oftentimes, when I hear about people who struggle with anxiety and depression, and then I hear about them committing suicide, I oftentimes wonder if, you know, they were in that kind of space, because I had suicidal thoughts and ideations when I was in that. So I often, like, my heart always goes out like, I wonder. And I feel like you for sure are saving people's lives when you put a word to it, you know, and you allow someone to identify what is exactly going on, so that they know that, no, I'm not going crazy. And Shaun said I'm going to be fine. Like, so that's how it was for me. Yeah. So I really do believe that you probably saved my life, you know, because the pep talks, I would listen to those on repeat and just play them on repeat. When I'd be on the train going to work, when I would fall asleep, that was what really helped me, because there was times I would be in the bed and you could feel my heart beating in my hands. Like, everything was like, it was so hard, and it was just hard for me to calm down. And so I would use your stuff all the time. So I just really think that you're probably saving lives out here for a lot of people. For
That's very
sure.
kind. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. And yeah, no, it's I mean, for me, it's something that like I remember back in the day when it was happening to me. I remember thinking like I would give my left arm to have a discussion with somebody who just had been through this, who could explain this to me, break it down, and just tell me that I was going to be okay. And because it wasn't there, and you get bits and pieces on forums and things, you kind of get and someone might say, "Oh, I've recovered, I'm feeling better," and then there'd be a comment saying like, "Oh, you never had it that bad in the first place," and you're kind of going, "Oh my God, like this isn't helping." Like, I just need I just need the consistency and clarity of like of a therapist to say to me, no, this is what it is. So I feel like there's a pane of glass between me and the world. Okay, that's why this is happening. Okay, I'm afraid to walk outside because when I look up at the sky I start freaking out. Okay, that's why that happens. And if someone had just break it down, and then you just kind of go, all right, okay, so each one of those has a logical explanation. I can then start to leave that stuff behind and move towards recovery. So that's kind of what the basis of writing the book was. At least writing that first pamphlet version of it back in the day was just to say, okay, I've recovered. Here's something that goes through every facet of this, and of course it's expanded multiple times over the years. If you don't mind my asking, LaToya, throughout your whole experience with it, what was your lowest point? Was there a specific experience or aspect of it that you can remember that felt like it was the lowest point of it?
I think my lowest point was it was just a very strange feeling that I was feeling in my head, where it was like a pressure that was happening in my head, and it was like I was in a body, but it was like I was trapped in my body. That's what it felt like, and it was very strange. So it was like I was fighting to get out of something, or fighting to get out of my body, or seeing there was like maybe an illusion here, and I just needed it to connect, and that was just a very weird feeling of just feeling not at home in my body. And I feel like that was the darkest time and the most uncomfortable time. And it was hard for me to sleep. It was hard for me to lay down. It was I wasn't eating. I would be in meetings and I'd just be sitting there. I would just sit and stare at my laptop. And the people there, I was trying to explain to them what was happening to me, and they were making fun of me. And they isolated me. And so I feel like that was the most dark time and the most hurtful time, because nobody like knew what you were going through. Woo, that just it took me there. But yeah, no one knew. So you just be feeling like you're completely isolated and completely alone. And like, what the hell is going on? And I don't know why that just made me cry, because normally I don't. But yeah, that was the darkest time. That was the darkest moment, was just that whole like feeling completely uncomfortable in my body, and nobody understood it. And that is the worst feeling. So I think that's why also I have no problem answering my DMs to anybody who reaches out to me about it. I even have sent people my Calendly and be like, listen, I'm not no therapist. I ain't even Shaun. But if you want someone to talk to and like trade war stories with, pop your name on there. I'll give you 30 minutes. I'll give you 30 minutes. We can go in and trade war stories, and hopefully that helps you to at least get some sleep that night, So I have no problems doing that. And I will always be there to help people, because that's the worst feeling in the world, is when you feel like you can't talk to anybody, no one understands, and everyone's looking at you like you got three heads. And it's just like, it's that backup, that backup that everybody's looking at you like, something.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. Like, he would be looking like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, things just don't feel real. I feel like I'm in a dream world. And it's like, nothing feels real. And the people be looking at me like, oh my God, that girl is not good. So yeah, I feel like that was like the darkest part of it, was that, for sure. But I do thank God that I had the experience now, because I feel like it's made me more resilient. It's made me more aware of my body and like what's happening in stressors and stress factors. Because while I'm 100% healed from it, there's still some times where I can tell if my anxiety levels are high. Like I can feel a little like disconnect happening sometimes, or and I'm like, oh, okay, I know what it is, but it does not scare me anymore. And I just go on about my day. And push through. And it doesn't bother me anymore at all. It doesn't scare me in the least bit. Not at all. So I think that's the ultimate healing, when if you should so happen to have a feeling, or a fleeting thought or something like that, that it doesn't stop you in your tracks, like, because you already know what you're dealing with.
Absolutely. And the thing of when you recover, because a huge part of recovery is it's understanding what the experience was and why it happened. And yeah, it was really, really weird and really scary, but there's actually very simple reasons for it. It's very, very common, and most people will experience this at some point in their lives. So if in the future you're in high stress situations, which are a normal part of life, I mean, you're living in New York City, working a couple of jobs, like, I mean, for everyone experiences like these moments or periods of anxiety. And it's like in the post DPDR, like once you've in recovery, it's like noticing that your heart is beating a bit more quickly. If you feeling like very slight instances of kind of gotta feel slightly kind of out of it, like, but then that's, so the first time that happened, I thought to myself, I'm going crazy. I have broken my brain with weed.
Yeah.
And now if I ever experience like that, like, which is, I mean, and I'm talking like maybe once every couple of years, like I'll spot it and I'll say, okay, I'm under way too much stress at the moment.
Yeah.
So I need to switch to decaf for a couple of days.
Yeah.
I need to meditate more. I need to start going back to the gym. It's usually if my sleep is all over the place as well, but having the knowledge of what happened changes your perspective on it completely and prevents it from ever being a problem again. Because the only reason it became a problem in the first place was because we didn't understand what it was. And we said in the same way that if somebody's heart is beating a bit more quickly, they misinterpret it and say, I'm having a heart attack and I'm going to die. It's like, no. Your heart's beating a bit more quickly because you're walking into an exam. That's all that's happening. Happening. It's okay.
Yeah.
But it's just changing your understanding of these symptoms of anxiety takes away the scaffolding that allows it to turn into this big, massive problem. And it allows your heart rate to get back to normal, the racing thoughts to fade away and stop, and you're absolutely fine. The thing you mentioned as well, Toy, about like that sensation, that the feeling of being trapped in your own body was a huge thing for me as well. I remember thinking like, I'm stuck in my head, like I'm stuck in this mind, and whatever I do, even if I go traveling the world, which at the time I felt that I would never be able to do anyway, but I thought even if I do, I'm still stuck in my mind, I'm still stuck in my head. In the same way that like if I was like in an elevator and the doors wouldn't open, and it was just like, but there is no escape from this. And also the fear of like verbalizing it to people and knowing that the way you're describing it maybe sounds very worrying, like, and maybe and your rational brain is saying, Shaun, these aren't things that a sane person would say. Like,
exactly.
A sane person probably wouldn't be saying, I feel like my memories are fragmenting. Like, that's not great, like, you know.
Yeah.
But as the experience continues, and especially through recovery, you kind of look back at it and you say, for me, I learned I have a strong sense. I learned to have a strong sense of compassion for myself and for the experience, and say, okay, like that was you doing your very best to describe an experience that you had no frame of reference for, and it was just like there was nothing you could compare it to, and you were trying your best to describe it in terms that felt accurate, and that also conveyed the urgency as well, because I didn't want people to think that, like, you know, well, like, oh, Shaun, he feels a bit out of it, but he's grand, like, you know. I was like, I'm not grand, like, I feel like I'm in serious trouble here, like, you know, and I don't know if this is ever going to stop. But with the hindsight of recovery, I look back on that period of time and trying to describe the feeling of being trapped in my head, and using language that would have worried me and other people at the time, and thinking, do you know what? You were doing your best. Like, you were doing your very, very best
absolute best.
Yeah, to describe a very, very bizarre experience.
Very, very.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how recovery started, and in particular, what did that feel like when you started to really see progress with your recovery?
Sure. So the recovery started when I started to create a routine. I of course was trying everything. So I was like, I'm going to get a juice fast. I joined the gym. You know how it is. We're doing everything under the sun. So I went and got a juice fast. I joined the gym. So I was taking these classes. I would take walks. I would oftentimes go and take walks and then take my shoes off and let my feet touch concrete so that I could ground myself and do these sensory things. I did a lot of sensory exercises, like, this is my laptop. My laptop feels like this. These are the keys. They're black and I feel these ridges. It was very detailed, simple tools that I was using to keep myself grounded daily. A Different World is one of my favorite sitcoms to watch. And I oftentimes tell people this, or Martin. I would sit and watch Martin. Like, I needed to laugh. So, and me, I take nothing in life seriously. If you know me personally, you know I take nothing in life seriously. My Instagram is absolutely ridiculous. So, I at one point lost my laughter, but I was like, you know, I would watch television or watch A Different World. It's easy to watch things that you already know the outcome to, because, you know, that minimizes any kind of heightened anxiety. So I would watch A Different World or Martin and sit and laugh and watch those on rerun, let it play when I would go to sleep sometimes, or listen to your pep talk. So my recovery consisted of, as you taught us, to create these routines, to eat healthier. I stopped drinking. I didn't drink any alcohol at all during that time. I didn't even crave it because I was like, it caused it. Everything caused it. So I was like, never again. I'm now drinking now, you know, like now it's like I need to stop drinking because it makes me gain weight at this point. It doesn't cause anything else. So that was pretty much what my recovery process was. Unfortunately, during the recovery process, I would say, so I got the program in April. By June, I was getting back to myself. It was rather quick for me. I was one of those stories, because I was just so focused on distracting myself and using even the tool of, like, if it makes me feel like I'm high, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to enjoy myself with people. And I'm just going to pretend that I have smoked a large blunt and I'm having a great time. You know what I mean? Or I've had a drink and that I'm having a good time. So I would still focus and stay in the social scenes. And I didn't I wasn't able to go out and start getting the social scenes until a month and a half in or 2 months in. So it does take time, but that was also a way for me to reconnect, was going out and being amongst people and going to the industry events. I feel like that was definitely a part of my recovery. And then, as I was saying, unfortunately, by the time we got to July, I went to Essence Festival, had an amazing time. And one of the girls that went with us, who I was very close with, we came home and she passed away suddenly as soon as we got back from Essence Festival. So I kind of relapsed a little bit, and went back into the spacey space. But I was able to manage it much better because I knew exactly what it was. And then can still go in with the routines, and also build an analog girl. That really, really helped me, um, to be able to just sit on a mic and just regurgitate everything, and like just all my emotions, all my thoughts, and um, get creative with it, actually. So it taught me how to audit. It taught me how to edit. Like I'm my own editor. I'm my own producer. So it's helped me to become a more creative, if you will, in the entertainment space and the audio space. So those are my tools, and that's what my recovery was like.
Okay, that's great to hear.
Mhm.
And how was the DP manual specifically, Latoya? How was that helpful in your recovery?
Oh my God, that was it. I mean, helpful. It was it. That was the recovery. Like, the DP manual was the recovery. I read that thing. I read that book from beginning the pamphlet. I read it from beginning to end. It took me, like, I read half of it on my train ride into work and the other half on my train ride back home. And I was motivated, and I was like, routines. I'm going to the gym. Like, that's what it was. So like the DP manual and the pep talk was it for me. Like, and I really do. I'm a firm believer in the subconscious thoughts. So I really do believe that the recordings is what seals the deal. Um, because you need that. And that's what I told that young boy that reached out to me last week. I was like, you need to, and I was like, I'm not going to help you if you're not going to listen, because that's another thing. You got to want to get better. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it takes work. And you mentioned that in the manual, like, this is not going to happen overnight, and you do have to work at it. And I just feel like the DP manual was my Bible through that. And I will always credit you. I always talk about you, always credit you. And anybody that reaches out to me, I'll be like, listen, I don't have the answers for you, but I know who does. So this is what you're gonna do. So,
That's
and yeah, like that DP manual was what saved me during that time, for
that's so
sure.
good to hear. That's so
Mm-hmm.
that's yeah, that's so good to hear, Latoya. Yeah, thank you. Um, so now that you've recovered, what's your day-to-day life like? Is it back to normal? So getting back to normal, this is something people ask me a lot, like getting back to normal, is it actually getting back to normal?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It absolutely gets right back to normal. You get right back in the thick of things. As a single woman in New York City, you go right back to that stupid dating life, these stupid men out here. You go back to you go back to the regular stresses of life, like you get right back in it,
Yeah.
trying to get a better paying job, your girlfriend's getting on your nerves. Like that, I oftentimes mention that when I talk to people, like, listen, girl, you're gonna go right back into the regular stresses of life. I'm telling you, and it's gonna be normal, and you're actually going to be happy to have those stresses instead of worrying about if the sky is gonna cave in on you, or if your dishwasher, when you open it, is going to suck you in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
it's something I often say, is that like I always thought that when I had DP and DR, I thought if I ever get out of this, like every day is going to be Christmas for the rest of my life. I will never stop celebrating. I'm just going to party until I'm 84 years old and drop dead, right? But like, if I will never take another day for granted. And then once I recovered, it was just like,
I lied.
I should probably get out of my parents' place because they're driving me crazy. Like, you know, I should probably start gigging again because I stopped all my music gigs when I got this, tentatively ringing up bars going, is there any chance of some work there? Like, but that became, it just, it gets so back to normal that it's almost kind of boring, like, in a good way. You're just like, well, I have to get back to all this stuff I used to do, like,
Exactly. And you don't even know when it happens. That's the hard part. When people I'm sure people ask you, when did you know that you were recovered? And I don't even know. I think I just kind of just slipped back into normal living. Yeah, just slip right back in.
Yeah. One way, it's a great way of describing it. So one way I always an illustration I think is really, really good is like, if you think of a time when you had a song. Imagine you've got a song stuck in your head, and for 48 hours it's driving you crazy, right? And you just can't stop thinking about it. You're trying to work, you're drifting off to sleep, and then off we go with the tune again. Oh, great, like, and then a couple of weeks later, you meet a friend, and the friend says to you, hey, do you remember when you had that song stuck in your head? And you go, oh yeah. And if the friend asked you, what was it like forgetting about that song? What was the experience like? And the answer is, you don't know, because you forgot about it while you were listening to other music. You forgot about it while you were on the way to work, when you were reading a book. You didn't forget about it by monitoring it and checking it and going, I need to have this forgotten by Friday afternoon at 4:00 because I've got a meeting, like, that's not going to work. The forgetting process happens when you're looking in the other direction. And that's what happens with recovery from DPDR and any anxiety-based condition as well. Is that you just get back to normal. It becomes less and less important, and you just kind of stop remembering it. You stop remembering that you're supposed to be an anxious person because you're too busy doing other stuff, like, You're
busy living life. Too
busy. Yeah.
And that's what the recovery process is in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Perfect. You know what I mean? And you do a great job of explaining like that is what is to come in the manual. And I think that helped me too as well. Like, that's what I look forward to. That's what I can't wait until I wake up one day and I'm like, I don't even remember. Like, I don't even remember. It's hard for me to even like get to what exactly I was feeling during the DP too as well. So I was looking forward to those moments.
Yeah. The way I think about that stuff is I can remember all of it. So I remember like not being able to walk into the bathroom because if I looked in the mirror, I'd start to panic because I felt like I couldn't recognize my face, or I couldn't walk outside because the sky would freak me out. Like, I remember having those experiences, but I can't relate to them anymore. Yeah. And I don't, and on a fundamental level, at almost physical level, I don't understand what I was worried about. I don't understand why I couldn't walk outside. I remember it happening. I remember thinking I had good reason for it, but I can't relate to that anymore. And the reason I can't relate to it, the reason we can't relate to it, is because for that period of time in our lives, our anxiety levels went up here. We didn't know what to do about them. We did a lot of the wrong things. Certainly, I did for a long time. And the anxiety levels stayed up there and kept all of these catastrophic, frightening, racing thoughts going, making us think that we couldn't go look in a mirror or couldn't look up at the sky. And then eventually we started to do the right things, and the anxiety faded away and stopped. The racing thoughts stopped, the catastrophizing stopped, and the feelings of DP and DR stopped. And then you walk outside and you don't even think about the sky because you're too busy listening to a podcast, you're too busy listening to an audiobook, or what? I have to walk the dog, like,
Yeah.
But the sky, whatever. Like,
And I think there was one thing that you said. You just hit the nail on the head. Where oh my gosh, the thought just left me. You were just talking about the sky. Oh, so you were saying that you can't it's like a fleeting thought and you just can't remember why you were upset with why you were panicking from those things. But it's like, have you ever, like, can you imagine the feeling of it, or it's just that you just remember it? That's what I'm trying to ask. Like, because I don't know that I can, like, I can't go in there and like, I will never, like, I can't say I can feel, or I know I would look at my hands and say like, this didn't seem real. But like the feelings of those things, like that, I don't remember them at all. I can't express them either. Like I can't say like what that actual feeling was, other than the feeling like I was stuck in my body.
Yeah. And I guess, like, even when you were describing it earlier, describing that the low point of feeling like you were stuck in your body and not being able to, I had a quite a strong emotional reaction to that, because I remember having that experience, but it's like, if this was like 15 years ago, it was back in 2005, 2006, and somebody mentioned that to me, like I would have a panic attack from just hearing those words.
Oh, really?
Right? Oh my God. I couldn't, like, there was certain phrases. There was, for a good example, the film Heat, for example, right? Mm-hmm. If I saw like a poster for the film Heat, or if I was in the video store. Remember video stores? And there was
we're that old.
Yeah. If there was like a DVD copy of like Heat, that would set me off. So I had a list. Okay. I had a list of things that would set me off. But the mistake I think I made was that, like, I thought that I had to figure these things out one by one, and I had to kind of like delineate and understand why I was afraid of the sky, or why I was afraid of heat, or all these different things. And what I realized was that, like, I don't need to do that. This isn't an obstacle course. What I need to do is turn down the engine of anxiety that's causing these little phobias to happen. Yeah. And when I did that, I realized, like, the thing is like, if I sit down to watch Heat, like, I'm not saying to myself, fingers crossed I could watch this without having a panic attack. It's like, but because that's gone, like,
Yeah, there's no fear of it. Because even if the panic attack did come, you know exactly what to do to come out of it. I think that's what. Yeah, it's like you would say, it's the panic attack is the fear of having the panic attack, or the anxiety is the fear of having the anxiety, or how. Yeah, I know. Yeah. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's an example I give in one of the videos on YouTube, and it's like people recover from anxiety-based conditions all the time. Like, if you're a human being, you probably are or know a lot of people who have recovered from some form of anxiety. Like, maybe they had a couple of months of panic attacks or something. It's the most common thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
But people who are recovered from all anxiety-based conditions, they're not walking around high-fiving each other saying, "Isn't it great that I don't feel anxiety and DP anymore?" Like,
Right.
And the reason they're not doing that is because it has nothing to do with them anymore. Like, anxiety and DP have, like, I discuss them all the time and all the rest of it, but the experience of it has nothing to do with me anymore, because I'm not in a life or death situation. Like, what I would say is that, like, it's like, if I was walking into town, walking on the way to the cinema, and saying to myself, "Isn't it great that I don't feel anxiety?" It would be the same as if I was walking into town saying, "Isn't it great that I don't speak German because I'm not living in Germany?" Mm-hmm. Like, technically that's correct, but why would I be thinking that? It's not relevant to me. Like, now, if I'm in a life or death situation, if there's like a natural disaster, and then I do feel intense feelings of anxiety and fight or flight, then it's relevant. That's a correct and natural response. But if I'm walking to the cinema to meet my friend, that has nothing to do with me. So even though I remember the experience, I can't relate to it because it's not relevant to my day-to-day experience now. And that's what we're aiming for with recovery from DP. It's not like, "Oh, I hope you don't have a panic attack today." It's like panic attacks have nothing to do with me anymore because
Yes.
because my fight or flight response isn't going to DEFCON 1 at times when it shouldn't. It did for a
Yeah.
period of time in my life. It did, and
Yeah.
the scariest thing about that was that I didn't understand what was happening. But then I figured it out, and I was able to let it go and take all of this narrative structure around and let it go, and then it
Yeah.
just
It
faded away.
disappears. Yours is
It
DEFCON 1,
disappeared.
and yeah, it just
Yeah.
disappears. Yours is DEFCON 1, and I think I just remember mine's is spiritual warfare. I always thought I was in spiritual warfare all the time. And I just thought about how you did a really great job of also telling me, because it was kind of like you was reading me, like, listen, because I listened to the book and read the book, but it was just and I don't know why I thought it was like so profound, because it is, like, I mean, it's all simple stuff, but it is very profound to kind of like pinpoint what it is, because you would be like, it's anxiety, and then it's almost like you already knew what we were gonna think in the pamphlets, because you're like, and I know when I say it's anxiety, you're gonna say, but I feel calm, but I don't have it, I don't feel it.
Right.
and and it's like, no, but I'm here to tell you. That was one of your lines, like, no, but I'm here to tell you it's anxiety. Like, you're still very anxious, because at one point I would be like, well, how is it anxiety? Like, I'm not panicking. I just feel like I'm in a dream world. I feel like my body's calm. I just don't feel like I'm connecting. And I feel like that was like the turning point of realizing, and you just did a great job of explaining that. And I feel like just you made it like so understandable and just easy to read and easy to digest, even in such a heightened time, because it's really hard to even read when you're in that space. And you just made it so easy to comprehend. That's why I just be like, just go read the manual. It's not going to be this intense. It's not the presence of, what is that Eckhart Tolle's book?
The Power of Now.
The Power of Now. It's nothing like that. I picked that book up. I was like, absolutely not. Is this English? Is this even English?
I read that book as well. And I actually quite enjoyed it, but the mistake that I made was the first time I tried to read it was in the middle of Anxiety and DPDR. And it's like, no, it's too
absolutely, because the being thing, it's hard to connect that. No. Yeah. So you did an amazing job of just stating the facts and simplifying it for people who struggle with even like retaining information during that time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, thank you, LaToya. And I definitely tried to structure it in a way that, like, if I was reading it, I would anticipate the questions, because the questions are all the same. The questions are like, meet someone someone says, I've recovered from it. And they say you can recover too. And my response was like, I don't know. I was 25 when it happened, and sure, you're 27. Like, we're completely different. Like, right. And it's like, okay, now I know what you're thinking is that, like, the differences between us means that maybe you have a different version of it. Right. But that's not correct. There are no different versions of it. There's no different versions of DPDR that last for different amounts of time. It's just anxiety. But it's just kind of anticipating those questions, because I asked all those questions. I drove myself crazy asking those questions, and I drove everyone else crazy as well on the forums. Like, tell me what color jumper did you wear today? Like, Yeah. Until you talk to that person on the forum, and they're like, yeah, I've been in it for 20 years. What? I was slapping my laptop down. Like, oh no, 20 years. But I remember, because I went back to my email that I sent to you, and I was like, Shaun, I'm sorry to bother you, but my vision's blurry. Is a feeling of vertigo real? And you were like, yeah, very common. And it was just so kind of you to respond. So that's why I'm like, and even for you now, I don't know if you're responding now or have the capacity to, but I was just so grateful and thankful for you to respond to me then. I didn't think I was going to get a response, and you definitely responded back. So it was great. Yeah, no problem. I'm delighted it was it was helpful. And and interesting as well, like the when we have things, we experience things like vertigo, and loss of sleep, and also like yourself as well. You mentioned earlier, Latoya, you had trouble eating, like kind of,
Yeah. And my vision was blurry. My vision was blurry.
Vision as well. So we're going through these things at first. We think like, well, this is some sort of like catastrophic disease that I have somehow developed that I don't think anybody else has ever had.
Yeah.
And then when you break them down, you say, okay, so lack of sleep, anxiety, loss of appetite, anxiety, heightened awareness of your visual field, your peripheral vision, and you better believe that's anxiety, But it's just kind of breaking it down one by one. And you go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Like
don't realize it though. In the thick of it, you don't realize it. And I didn't really pinpoint that I had been an anxious person and child. It wasn't until having that experience that I realized, oh, anxiety has definitely been a huge part of my life, like for majority of my life, for sure. So, and I just never put two and two together.
Yeah.
Until then.
Yeah. And it's and in a way it's a blessing to go through an experience with chronic anxiety, because it allows you to understand it and categorize it, and then it doesn't become this kind of random roller coaster thing that it used to be. It certainly was for me too. Then it becomes something, and that like, well, fingers crossed it doesn't get too bad. Once you've been through that, you identify it and say, I know what this is, I know what that is. Okay, I haven't been sleeping right and I haven't been eating right. Okay, that's probably because my anxiety has been higher than normal. So I will take action to reduce that and get that back to normal, as opposed to catastrophizing this. I've got stomach cancer, which is one of the things I thought, because I was
you
like,
thought it was stomach cancer.
Oh, sure. I didn't eat. Like, I would look at food and I knew I felt hungry. I knew that my body needed food, but I would look at it and think, this isn't real. I couldn't eat it.
Now that symptom right there, I would like to have right now so that I can lose some weight. Fine.
Oh my God. Well, it's certainly not it's certainly not a problem for me anymore. But no. But at the time, like, I thought that this is like I can't. I started taking like protein supplements to get something into my body, but like I looked like a skeleton back. Like, I couldn't. But what I thought was, like, I have stomach cancer, or I've got or I thought I've got some sort of muscle wasting disease that is causing me to just I'll just fade away and die, like,
So you never thought anything to brain? Because like, all I thought was I was having a stroke or I had a brain tumor.
So this is the stomach cancer thing is like, if I was to go through the list of things that I thought that I had, like, we'd be here till the next pandemic.
Yeah, we'll be here all day talking about.
We'd be, yeah. I thought I had everything, like, everything. I was at one point, I was certain that I had Alzheimer's disease. I was certain, like, I was 25 years old, like, and definitely it's Alzheimer's, definitely, self-diagnosing, like,
Yeah, I thought it was a brain tumor. I was like, I almost got a brain tumor, aneurysm. Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. And you have to laugh at this stuff. And I hope that when people see that, we're laughing. Like, it's not an insensitive thing, but I think it helps you to understand that. I like to say DP ain't shit. That's what I like to say.
Yeah. The thing, the probably the most frustrating aspect about going through anxiety when you're going through it at first is that we tend to interpret the symptoms of anxiety through the filter of anxiety. So again, when you look at the symptoms of anxiety from a practical perspective and say, okay, you haven't eaten, you haven't been eating properly. Okay, the reason for that is because when your body and brain are in fight or flight response, it deprioritizes your appetite. One of the examples I like to give is, like, imagine you're getting chased through the woods by a grizzly bear, and then you come out into a clearing, and then you look down and there's a sandwich on a log down there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
now, are you going to go like, just actually really hungry? Like, like, of course you're not. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it has nothing to do with, like, whether your body needs the food or not, but your fight or flight response has completely deprioritized your appetite.
Yeah.
It could be the best sandwich in the world, but you're just like, okay, but your body is saying, but you're in danger and you need to move. When you look at it from that perspective, it's as clear as day. But when you're going through it first, and combine that with racing thoughts of catastrophizing, and of course you jump to conclusions like, well, I obviously have some horrendous disease and I'm going to die. But that perspective changes as recovery continues, thankfully.
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
God. Thank
Yeah.
God. Thank God. And then you look forward to the laughing. I always like to say, just look forward to laughing at yourself. And just being like, wow, that was ridiculous. Just look forward to that because it's
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, for
absolutely
sure.
gonna happen.
Yeah. But what
Yeah.
I always say to people is, like, there will come a time in your life very, very soon where you will ask yourself, like, what on earth was I worried about?
Yeah.
What was I
Yeah.
worried about? I know it doesn't feel like that at the moment, but it will happen. You look back at this
Mm-hmm.
and go like, I have no idea why I was scared of walking into the bathroom.
Absolutely.
No
Absolutely. Yeah,
idea.
right. Scared to walk out of my bedroom to look at the wood floor. And speaking of the sky, if anybody was feeling that way, it's like I was literally just on vacation in Antigua in December, and all I laid, we rented a boat and we were just laid out, and it was just so comforting to just look up at the sky and be on the water. I couldn't imagine what I would have felt like if I was in an open sea of water during the time I was going through that stuff. That probably would have been something in itself too. But it's like all of that was so peaceful to me. Now it's so peaceful to me now to
That's
look at the
great.
sky. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. One last question for you, Latoya.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to anyone on the channel now watching this video who's in the middle of going through DPDR at the moment? What would you say to them?
What would I say? It's not you, it's the DP. So that it's not you. And it's going to get better. It has to get better. It has no choice. The law of science and how things work in life, just the circle of life. It's going to get better. And you have to want it to get better too, as well. I think there is a responsibility that we do have to take when we acknowledge that it is depersonalization and it is anxiety, that there is a level of responsibility now that we have to take for ourselves, and we've got to want to do it too as well.
Well said. Well said. Before we finish up, Latoya, can you tell us what's happening in your world at the moment? You've a new podcast that I think you mentioned.
I do. I have a new podcast. It's called Runnin Late, and I host it with my friend Troy Hawkins. She's one of my new friends in life, and so we decided to get to know each other and talk about the pains and the gains of growing up later in life. I'm 43 years old. Yes, I know I look like I'm 25, but I'm 43. Troy is 39. And we've noticed that we are what we call late bloomers in life. So a lot of our glow up and a lot of our career choices and aspirations seem to be happening later in life. Even finding love and dating, which or lack thereof, mine is just lack thereof. So we explore those things. We explore that later in life. So it's a quite interesting podcast. We have fun with it. We also have a Patreon too, but you can find us on runninglate.pod on Instagram. Yeah, so Fantastic. We're having fun there. And it's new. We're building it up. But we're having fun with this. So I think that this is going to be a good ride. And I still have Analog Girl podcast episodes still up and alive and well on all platforms, including SoundCloud. The last episode was posted around Thanksgiving, and that was about gratitude. And if you haven't listened to my podcast, there's about 3 years worth of episodes there for you to get into. And I think I am going to move into a monthly episode drop for Analog Girl. So I'm not going to stray away from the mental health advocacy. But I do want to give my attention to running late right now. So I do have those 2 podcasts running and going. And the book Lose the Thoughts, Keep the Mind is still on sale on Amazon. And that's just a easy read on how to stop overthinking, which has a lot to do with the personalization. I do touch on DP briefly in the book, but I mostly talk about how to organize your thoughts and get ahead of overthinking and the tools that you can use. And they're very practical and affordable tools that I talk about in the book.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll link to each one of those in the link descriptions wherever you're watching this video, and I can't wait to check out the new podcast. And really looking forward to it.
I think we need to have you on the show. I really would love to have you come on and talk with us.
I'd love to be on the show, of course. Join
us. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, sign me up, and
I will.
Yeah, let me know when suits. I'd be absolutely delighted to join. Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
LaToya, it has been so lovely speaking with you. Thank you so much for being on the channel. I know everyone watching this is going to find it extremely helpful. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to being on your podcast soon.
Yes.
And sure, we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks, LaToya. Take care.